Hey, it's Swiggs. Today, well, technically the 18th. We've gotten wind of some of the best news to come out since the completion of crafting. In an article released by PC Gamer, Darktide Devs revealed some exciting news that players might not be expecting. You're damn right, because I did not see this coming at all. As part of patch 13, Darktide will be adding a new skill tree system that will be taking over management of our class's feats. This is a rework they've been busy on since the launch, and it's been a whole 9 months since then. Which is kind of insane to think about, that it's been this long already, but somehow we're nearing Darktide's first birthday real quickly, and it seems like this is going to be our early birthday present. And so far, this has been well received by the fans that have stuck around. Darktide was certainly growing stale in the summer sun, but the release of Auric level missions and the new Maelstrom modifiers were a welcome breath of life for the game. And even though the Maelstrom's difficulty can be a bit over-punishing as you're tossed like a beach ball between a swarm of 18 mutants, the spike in difficulty helped make good weapons and proper builds feel much more impactful to your team's success. But at the same time, this also makes it much more obvious that the current skill system just doesn't provide much diversity in terms of builds and playstyles for players. Certain classes just feel a bit underloved compared to others. Though Fat Shark has done a lot to improve the experience of playing Psyker and Ogryn, hard not to feel something is still fundamentally missing from our Sparkhead and Slab friends. This next update seeks to address all these pain points while delivering plenty of new toys to purge with as we play with the whole new system and come up with all new formulas for Bloodshed. Also, if you're new here, consider subscribing or becoming a channel member. Members and Super Chats both receive priority responses in the comments for questions and video ideas, and your support goes a long way for the channel. So, without wasting much more time, let's sink our teeth into what's in store for this next big content drop. First up, how we interact with leveling and its effect on our character is obviously facing the most blatant changes. Previously, we've had to wait every 5 levels just to get a set of 3 exclusive options to improve our class. This made leveling up itself a bit more of a bureaucratic exercise at times with no guaranteed impact to the gameplay loop. Like, yay, I'm level 17, woohoo, but too bad I gotta wait 3 more levels for this to really do anything. And not to mention, there were columns of feats for some classes that almost felt like skipping a feat selection with how unimpactful the options felt. I'm looking at you, level 15 Zealot. And any of these feat options maintain exclusivity with each other, leaving no possibility of combining any feats from the same tier together. Instead, we will be receiving skill points every level now, which lets us purchase additional feats within the skill tree system. While not every branch will promise the same powerful returns of Counterfire or Holy Revenant, this will at least provide some interaction at every level and let us have a greater hand in shaping our character's playstyle at every milestone. And since we are interacting with this system as a skill tree rather than a previous tier system, there should be a lot more wiggle room to combine like effects with one another that we previously were barred from being able to mix when they were part of the same tier. We may be able to pair multiple toughness regen perks together like Warp Absorption and Essence Harvest, or we could even equip feats like Holy Revenant without having to necessarily sacrifice Thyrafpi Swift's strong quality of life stun negation. And unlike the current system, not every selection will be limited to simple feats. Sure, a big part of this overhaul will be bringing additional feat options for our builds and revisiting how we employ them, but we're also getting new Blitz and combat abilities for each class included too. So, carving our way through this skill tree, we're going to be adding plenty of passive feats that reward certain styles of play, but also unlocking new abilities capable of expanding the list of viable playstyles well beyond what regular feats were really able to give us. This is most noticeable for a class like Ogryn, which essentially has 0 goddamn abilities that sort of market their ability to shoot good, or better, I suppose. And basically every feat available focuses on them being a clobbering time machine, with their combat ability notorious for being the last thing an Ogryn does before they're swallowed whole by the horde that they just slammed through. And while bone-breaking bruiser gameplay is fun, I've always yearned for the Gunlugger subclass that was originally found in the old Datamine Hall, so that way I could just spew Daka Daka to my mind's content. And it looks like those Datamine subclasses have come to rest within the new skill tree system. The actual structure of the skill tree is split into 3 main branches, each branch representing a certain identity of sorts for the class to play out. One of these branches will be more or less the bulk of the vanilla options, quote-unquote, as we know them. There may be some tweaking or additions to each of these vanilla paths, but I suspect they will likely be preserved as much as possible to help serve as an anchor for existing players that already know what works for them. But the two other additional branches have a lot more room to grow and will effectively bring 2 new subclasses to each main class. And each of these new subclasses will bring their own Blitz and combat abilities to the party. At least from what we can see, that does seem to be the case. While they aren't exactly willing to spill the beans on all the details for each option, we do get a few spoilers for what's to come, with the juiciest deets saved for our Psyker and Ogi boys, and just a teensy tiny bit for Zealots and Veterans. First, we do need to clarify that there isn't going to be a confirmation on what counts as a Blitz or Grenade option, or a combat ability, though we can garner a bit through just context clues and understanding what the ability's meant to sort of replace. But regardless, take any speculation on their classifications here with a grain of tasty salt. But siblings are getting a goddamn bubble shield now. I mean, at base it does start as a 2-dimensional shield, but after an upgrade it transforms into a potential squad-wide dome. It does look like from the screenshots they teased that it would potentially be a one-way shield as well. That is to say that a whole squad can take cover under their Sanctioned Psyker's beloved, and still return fire on those silly heretics that forgot to bring their own hell-fueled demigod. That even if this is the case, that you can't shoot through it from the inside, having shield in the back pocket is going to be amazing for resisting moments where every single enemy is simultaneously spewing Daka Daka at the team, and you can't flee to cover since you're punching some broken servo skull or reviving a partner that wanted to spoil the ending to Red Dead Redemption with a sniper gauntlet. I am assuming this would be a combat ability rather than a Blitz, by the way, though only since the other 2 advertised additions for the Psyker seem to be clear alternatives specifically to the existing Brain Burst Blitz, and this does feel like an adequate replacement for the Wrath ability that we currently have. Speaking of which, one of those new Blitz is a telepathic throwing knife, which is part of what is supposed to be a crowd control path for the Psyker. The way the article describes it, though not quite specifically, it's meant to behave like the knife from Guardians of the Galaxy. And if this is true, it would be a beautiful sight to behold to watch this knight dip from Poxwalker to Poxwalker, swiftly boring a hole through each one's skull as it eliminates an entire crowd in front of you. I am curious as to how many this attack would be able to target at once, but I'm assuming since it's part of a crowd control path, I feel it should have a wider reaching audience than the original Brain Burst target of one nature. Could be that you even hold concentration for the ability, continuing your telepathic stabbies while continuously building up peril. And if this Brain Burst alternative doesn't really suit your fancy for some reason, well, you can still blast lightning from your fingertips to simmer heretic nervous systems Sith style. I'd imagine this has to behave like a mix between the current Wrath ability and the Surge Staff, damaging and shock freezing a certain amount of enemies within range, but get very little info to go about on this one. Ogryn's, meanwhile, figured out how to throw more than just a box, so congratulations for our friends. First up is harnessing your inner caveman and just braining the daemons with a really big and friendly rock. It looks like it's pretty much a mirror of the Box of Hurts damage profile, but it has the added benefit of being a piece of rubble that the Ogryns will regenerate after a cooldown. I'm assuming this just means they managed to pick up another friendly looking rock, and one day I do hope we get to put funny googly ores on them to complete the artistic vision of this ability. Naturally, this should end up being a Blitz ability and will be one of the 2 new choices given to the Ogryns exploring the new skill tree. The other option is a massive grenade, and I mean massive. While we don't know how big the boom will be, considering the size comparison, we aren't looking at some piddly-dink firecracker, that's for sure. I'd probably think maybe front row of the Oppenheimer screening, I'd imagine, for its effect. As for new combat abilities, Ogryns will have an option for a taunt, which isn't really expanded on pretty much at all in this article, but could represent a way to force aggro while potentially boosting your defense for a time. Could work very well with any reworks that they do for the slab shield as well. Alternatively, you can instead take a Daka Daka stance and increase fire rate and reload speed, empowering the big boys to finally be able to vomit rounds downrange in the greatest possible volume. As for the Veteran and Zealot, we've mentioned that their details are much lighter than the teasers, so it might be a little bit more disappointing than the news for the Psyker and Ogryn, but we do still have some things to share. One of the combat abilities looks like some Fusro Da stagger push ability, likely acting similarly to the existing Psyker's Wrath ability. This may mean it's part of a more supportive branch for the veteran parent class, but no other supportive information is really going to say one way or the other. I am curious what other effects it carry, as even the Psyker's Wrath ability does more than just merely trip heretics in front of you for a bit. It may end up just being a stronger stagger effect though, and function closer to the Zealot's stub grenade in terms of duration, but I'm hopeful it'll have the capacity to at least be upgraded to achieve more than this and be a bit more showy in practice. As for Zealots, we get very little, so we're a little bit sad today, but we do get a glimpse of their skill tree as part of the article. Some of the perks certainly look familiar, but from icons alone, it's hard to really get a picture of what each branch's buffs will actually look like, especially since existing icons may be swapped or redesigned as part of the skill tree feature's release. You certainly can see the Blitz abilities, two of which being traditional grenades, but one suspiciously very knife-shaped. While we certainly won't be getting any flashy telepathic stab like Psyker is getting, makes me wonder what that knife's going to do and what makes it worth chucking at demonic threats in the heat of battle. Likewise, we are also going to get a view of 3 combat abilities, with one clearly being our existing charge power. However, I am curious what that green book item is meant to represent. I'm assuming it isn't a power dependent on a grimoire being present, but it certainly looks grimoire-esque. Its other abilities farther along the green section have icons that look like shouts and battle cries. This ability may have our Zealot power themselves, or the whole squad even, via holy scriptures during a mid-battle sermon. And another curious aspect of the tree here are those little gray nodes in between certain sections. These nodes may mark choices that lock down other branches for the build, or they could just be empty nodes that you have to purchase to access stronger feats beyond, forcing players to pay a skill point toll to get access to deeper abilities. It's certainly possible though that they are just visual padding, though that's certainly less likely as the tree could just have been restructured to not require their presence then. But being able to actually sift through all the speculation is just really going to have to wait until we get a proper deep dive on patch 13 and how all these things, including these sort of pseudo nodes, will function in practice. But regardless, these changes are going to be a ton of fun to play with when it arrives, and I think I'm going to really enjoy checking out all the new skills and feats as I recreate some of my favorite builds in the new system, potentially adding a few new tricks up my sleeve while I'm at it. But that'll be it for this video. If you liked the video, drop a like, comment if I missed anything, have a great day. See ya! Also, thanks to Gamut Mole for the $5 super on the last video. Glad you liked the video.